panel, should MPs be getting a pay rise? Let's start with that, Amanda. Do they deserve more cash?
No, they certainly don't, and not at this time. I mean, you know, what is your bill? Your bill's gone up by what, 50 quid?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah?
Extra couple of cheese sandwiches.
Okay. So, but everyone is hurting at the moment. Everyone, and we know it's going to get worse because of the repercussions for the fuel supply over the situation in Ukraine. But this is, you know, it's tin-eared. To their credit, both Boris and Starmer said we should not be taking this. It's an independent body that attributed it.
Yeah.
What I would like to see, a number of MPs have said that they will not take the pay rise. I would like to see them donating it to the Red Cross. And let's name and shame the ones who do and the ones who don't.
However, isn't every MP effectively the CEO of their constituency, responsible for the welfare? Okay,
I'm sorry.
You haven't been in politics as long as I have.
Responsible.
That's a real stretch.
Stick with me on this.
They told me you're a comedian. I get it now.
But on this one, I'm deadly serious. I mean, up to 100,000 people are in every constituency in the country. That's a lot of lives, and whoever the MP is has a big sort of stake in the welfare of those people.
There is no audit of the work they do. There are some MPs who are brilliant constituency MPs who work day and night. There are a lot of them who work 4 days a week, and that is it. I mean, honestly, I mean,
That's 100%
Sean, you know
right.
more about this than I do.
No, Sean doesn't want to go into Parliament because he can't afford it, because he can't live off 80 grand a year. Not with those suits.
Because
I've got to say, most people wouldn't give an MP a pay rise at the best of times. Right just now, with this cost of living crisis coming down the pipe, it's wrong. Both Keir Starmer and Boris have said as much.
Yeah,
but the bigger question here is about pay rises across the public sector. Now, what's happened is there's lots of people in the public sector who do not earn a lot of money. But there's a significant chunk who earn stacks of money, more than MPs, who've had this pay rise. That's the conversation we have to have.
The likes of NHS middle managers on six-figure salaries.
Yes, because what we've done, what the public sector have done, is hide behind the fact that if you're a teacher, junior teacher, a police officer, if you're I don't know, an orderly in a hospital, you earn very little. And they've sort of pushed that to the fore. But there's people who run councils who are hidden in Whitehall who earn oodles of money, who've already had this pay rise. That's what we need to look at, because there's no respect for the bill payer. The people of this country have suffered for years, and working people in particular have had no pay rise until they voted for Brexit. So I think we need to look at it in a round, not just in the case of MPs.
I realise pay rises, Daisy, are a hard sell at this moment in time, off the back of the pandemic. But I've always thought that our MPs are underpaid, and if you paid MPs properly, and I would suggest £150,000 a year.
Wow.
And I would recommend the Prime Minister at least $500,000 a year, and that would pay for Boris's wallpaper. Then you'll get a better quality of candidate, because there are lots of people watching this show. Well, you're going to agree?
I completely agree, and I always have agreed. It's a horrible cliche, but you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, and that is
We've
what
got so many monkeys.
That is what happens in politics.
It's a jungle.
If you look at other countries like Japan or Singapore, where they pay massively more than us.
I think in Singapore it's $1 million a year.
The creme de la creme don't go into banking, don't go into tech, don't become entrepreneurs, don't do all this. They go into politics because it's worth their while. And back in the day, when the only MPs were landed gentry, aristocrats, they didn't need the money. It was it was just pin money.
Yeah.
It was
Lord
totally
this
irrelevant.
and the Duke of that.
It was totally irrelevant, and it's not like that anymore. So I'm afraid you do get.
Daisy, what would you pay an MP then? What would you pay?
Double.
We're going to 150k.
I tell you why that's wrong. If you look at Parliament now...
Careful, you might be entering the House.
Hold on.
I'm fighting for you.
But there's a fair spread... Hold on. There's a fair spread of people. If you pay that big salary, all you will get is city types. You will be having
Why? Why would a so-called normal person not want a big salary?
Hold on, hear me out. What will happen is you will get a monoculture of the highly successful, highly illiterate... What you want in Parliament is a spread of people who've had life experience. And I tell you something...
So pay them crap and you'll get a spread of experience?
Because the other thing...
Daisy, I think what he was saying, and Sean, I will overrule you in this one moment, please. If Daisy and I have both worked in politics and we are people of experience, may I say so, Daisy, even though you've had a lot less experience than me in terms of...
I thought you were about to say a lot of work.
No.
This guy was nearly London Mayor before the election was stolen.
Yes. No, but if we were offered 150k to work 4 days a week with a crèche on site, it may tempt us back into the world of politics.
Listen,
and you had been denied our presence on your
you would only get you would get this monoculture of very highly motivated, very highly sort of successful people, when what you need in Parliament is a spread of life experience.
But Sean, the other thing that happens with a pretty crappy salary is that you get all the MPs doing their second jobs, so they're not really focused. You get corruption. Countries where, you know, it is pretty much a proven fact that the more you pay the MPs, the less they're likely to take cash for honours, or in other countries, whatever the backhanders might be. Places like Singapore have this amazing scheme whereby the brightest kids at school are basically paid scholarships.
I agree with everything Daisy said. I want to actually stand up and applaud.
Look, the wickedest things in the world have been done by the supposedly
with a single thing I've said,
by the brightest people
I'm
in the world.
noting that.
It'll come.
No,
I'm noting
I'm telling you.
We can but dream.
But Sean, I'm not talking about the kids in the posh.
But Sean, I've got
a
perfect example of why MPs are underpaid: the expenses scandal.
But
the reason that happened, and you know as well as I do, and Daisy and Amanda, you'll back this up. The House of Commons authorities said to MPs, "Listen, we'll sign off your duck ponds and your flat-screen tellies because you're underpaid, and the public won't buy a pay rise, so you can just have more expenses." Now, in fairness to the Daily Telegraph, they exposed it, but really, I think the MPs were unnecessarily vilified because they were told, ignore the rules and put your expenses through.
Hold on.
That's true, isn't it? And why? Because they were underpaid.
I would take our level of corruption against almost any parliament in the world. And what you find about our parliament as well, people who can afford it, people who can't afford it, still want to be there. Paying them more would change the entire feel of the place.
Daisy.
You would get comments like Stella Creasy. She earns 82 grand a year and can't find a baby.
And there's an on-site creche in the
about
House
the
of Commons.
expenses. One of the problems with the culture when expenses was going on is they all thought that it was owed to them. They had this, well, we're on such a rubbish salary, but, you know, and they were all telling their chums, particularly, I'm afraid, in the Conservative Party, and I'm not saying that in a party political way, but they were sort of better at it. You know, oh, you know, dear boy, got a duck pond, you know, you can put that through, blah, blah, blah. And there was just this extraordinary culture of that's what you could get away with because the salary was bad.
It was a workaround. It was a workaround. I feel for the MPs, really, that were vilified as a result.
I didn't feel for them, but because they brought it on themselves because they didn't have any self-awareness of how bad it looked.
I just felt really jealous. I mean, I didn't even have a garden, let alone
I've long been jealous of the size of Lembit Opic's telly. Seeing is believing. An email from Dave who said, "Hi, Mark. MPs, pay them $150,000, no expenses." How about that, Dave?
Well, no expenses.
Sure.
Sean,
if you're going to pay... Look,
it's his nickname.
Listen, the no expenses thing, I understand, but I am worried about the type of person you generate in Parliament. You'd be generating people who just live separate lives.
Well, what about... OK, Sean, hypothetically, what about somebody that runs a small business who thinks I could make a contribution to public life, but they look at 80 grand a year, they think about the size of their mortgage, they look at their credit card bills and their debts, and they think, I just couldn't afford to be an MP?
Yeah, you'll always find someone who can, because remember, the $82,000 we currently pay is significantly
But don't you
above
want someone in the House that has set up a small business who perhaps has a salary of 100, 150 grand in the private sector, who looks at making a contribution to public life, but just thinks the salary is below 100k, I just couldn't do it.
But you don't want...
Don't you want those people in that Commons?
But you don't want everybody being like that, because they have the same conversation. It becomes a mono conversation, to use your term.
Fair enough.
And they don't live or have any experience how the rest of us live.
I still don't follow the logic of why... how much you're paid means what type of person goes into that job, because everybody would go into it for public, in theory and hopefully for public service, and you still have different parties. So you still have the Labour Party or equivalent of blah, blah, who have different beliefs. So hopefully they would have different backgrounds, but it just means that people wouldn't rule themselves out of going into politics because of the lack of money.
Daisy, with all your experience in politics, and you're so eloquent and clearly so beautiful, have you not ever thought that you would have loved to have been an MP?
No, the minute I worked for a Conservative MP when I was 19 years old, I worked for a Liberal Democrat, there is no way I could do that life. It is really hard life, and I wanted to have another life.
There's no work-life balance, is there?
And actually, Stella Creasy's point, I completely... Now, working in the House of Commons was the most incredible privilege, and every day you're walking through Westminster Hall, you just get this tingle and think this place is so amazing.
That's great.
But there are elements of it that are stuck in the dark ages, and I'm sorry, you don't achieve anything by having your employees working at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, but
it's outrageous that you would expect them to perform and then expect them to do something serious, like have a meeting with a constituent who's being abused by her husband or something like that at 9 o'clock the next morning, having had 5 hours.
But why is it the government's job, the state's job, to find a babysitter for Stella Creasy?
It isn't.
But there are two issues there. There's the baby issue, which I think was publicising it, but there's also, I don't want any of my MPs, whether they've got a baby or not in their arms, working at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Excuse me, we work until 1 o'clock.
Sean Bailey, Dave?
Running the country,
my best mate,
is a 24-hour-a-day job. Things happen, votes need to get...
That's the gig. That's the job.
The government's agenda will always be packed. If you have to be there late, you have to be late. I've done shift work. There's people at home now who have 2 jobs to make.
Yes, but you can
including young mothers.
Hold on, single parents. My mum worked her butt off to get me and my brother through life. She's a single parent. She had more than one job at some point. She definitely wasn't earning 82 grand, and she made concessions.
But Sean, I'm saying it's not.
You turned out very well, so well done, your mum.
It's not an efficient use of their time. I think they will be working late, but they could do proxy voting, they could do electronic voting, they could just modernise it and make them more efficient. Because of course they have to work round the clock, but they don't have to file through chambers, file through buildings to vote. It's stupid.
There's certain parts of the pomp that are needed, and I, as someone like all of us, who did a lot of work across Zoom and Teams and all the rest of it, don't want the world to be operating the way. They should be in Parliament. We expect them there. We pay them good money. Get on and do the job. If you can't do it, you need to change jobs. £82,000 a year is enough for your household to find...
Amanda, a brief word. My mate Hartley Brewer, has she got a point about Stella Creasy? Get over yourself?
I love Julia. She's just great. And she's absolutely right. You know, there's more than one person in this relationship. If not, just get childcare. They're not on a Tesco stacker's wage.
Yeah. Stella Creasy's husband is in the military and was abroad. So that was a stupid point to make.
OK.